In this session, you'll learn about the benefits of the CyberArk solution and how to use it. As an employee, you are required to log in and interact with various systems and different types of software. To access these systems and software, you must provide and remember multiple passwords. In many cases, the systems you access hold privileged information, such as customer information or sensitive company information. When you have access to privileged information, it makes you a privileged user, and unfortunately, a prime target for attackers. The problem is that most breaches now involve stolen credentials, and whenever possible, the attacker goes after the privileged user's credentials, because these are the ones that provide the access they need to get control over the IT infrastructure. Over the years, companies asked their privileged users to come up with strong passwords and to keep those passwords confidential. However, this is insufficient, as it is hard for most of us to memorize complex passwords, and attackers these days can easily crack any password. This is where the CyberArk solution can help you. The solution provides you with single sign-on capabilities to all privileged applications. Now, you only need to memorize one password, and it will connect you securely to the system that you need. CyberArk also provides more secured workflows against cyber attacks by validating the identity of the user using multi-factor authentication and limiting and monitoring access to sensitive data.
Let's see how simple it is to connect to a system using the CyberArk solution in the upcoming topics.
I know that change isn't always easy. I want to help you understand CyberArk's Privilege Access Manager and why it is really going to benefit you and keep your organization safe. Let's begin your journey with a story about Paul and Eva. Both Paul and Eva work for the Andor online clothing company, but they have separate roles and conduct themselves differently in their daily lives. Let's meet Paul first. Paul is an extremely qualified Linux administrator. Paul knows the importance of security because he has privileged access to so many critical systems. Paul knows that to be secure against the ongoing threat from bad actors, he must be vigilant. Paul uses unique, complex passwords for all the systems he accesses and routinely rotates those passwords. Paul would never store any credentials on his system. Instead, he has managed to memorize them all. Memorizing all the complex passwords and then changing them on a regular basis has made life tough for Paul, but he understands the threat and takes it upon himself to make sure he does everything he can to make himself and his organization secure. All this mindfulness makes Paul a security superstar, and to his credit, he has never been the victim of a breach. Well, at least not yet. Let's move across the hallway and find out a little more about our friend Eva. Eva is a developer for her organization. She loves to experiment with systems because that helps her find creative solutions to programming problems. Eva lives a less cautious lifestyle. She knows she has no access to any production systems, and therefore does not worry too much about being a victim of a breach. Eva does what she needs to be successful in her work by taking part in many reputable online forums, email lists, and Discord servers to share knowledge and ideas with many fellow developers. Ultimately, Eva is successful and is quite the developer. This is where our stories collide. One day, Eva opens an email that seemingly came from one of her normal online forums, and she clicks a link without fully reviewing the message. Eva unexpectedly introduced malware to her system. The malware harvests credentials that have been used on Eva's system, including those of the desktop administrator who recently helped Eva install a new printer driver. Using the stolen desktop administrator credential, the malware spreads to many other workstations, including Paul's, who is our security superstar. The malware installs a keylogger on Paul's system and captures the credentials he is typing while doing his work. Suddenly, several critical systems are vandalized using Paul's credentials. Paul, who is ever so careful, has been a victim of a breach and is upset. Because it is Paul's credentials that were used, management is looking to Paul for answers. Paul did nothing wrong but still managed to become a victim. Eva, although clumsy, still had good intentions to be the best developer she could. This was the only time Eva has ever made such a mistake, something that is common and can in fact happen to any one of us. This story is all too possible in our day-to-day activities. As you explore this education, you will learn how to navigate CyberArk and all the benefits that come with it.
Let us now look at how to connect to the targets using native tools.
Paul understands there is a need for the increased security CyberArk provides, but has never caused any security challenges and is very concerned about how it will affect his current workflow. Paul is also very efficient with his current processes and tools. He does not have the bandwidth to start from square one with a whole new way of doing things and will push back. Good news, CyberArk has closely aligned with operations to ensure Paul will not have to pick between security and efficiency. As a Linux admin, Paul needs to gain access to a resource using an account or SSH key that is being protected inside the CyberArk platform. To do this, Paul has a few options, and we'll start with the most common one, leveraging whichever SSH client he chooses. Paul starts by opening his terminal, but if you prefer, you can use any SSH client like PuTTY, Secure CRT, Stigwin, or the SSH binaries built into any Linux or Linux-like distribution. Paul needs to know 4 things to start the connection. His CyberArk username, this is typically Paul's standard directory ID, the vaulted account he wants to use. Today he'll connect with root to solve a Sev1 issue. The target resource he wants to connect to, we'll use the IP address of a Red Hat host. The CyberArk proxy server, his admins will provide this information. Once he has that information, all that's needed is to modify his SSH connection syntax to incorporate that information. It'll look like this: his CyberArk username, the vaulted account he wishes to use, the target resource, the CyberArk proxy server. He'll then be asked for his own username and password to access CyberArk, any multi-factor that is configured, and approval if necessary, and voila! He's connected without ever needing to see or know that root account password or the contents of the private key. It could rotate every day and be 40 characters long, but Paul doesn't have to worry with it. Things like secure copy and port forwarding are also supported here as well. This session can now be saved as an alias or inside the SSH client of choice for future reference.
Now let us delve into the CyberArk web portal and learn how to access credentials in case of emergencies.
Sometimes there might be cases where Paul needs to see the password through a secure checkout process or would prefer to connect right from the CyberArk web interface. Paul simply heads to the CyberArk URL, leverages his directory ID to authenticate, and then sees credentials available based on his identity. If you don't see any credentials here, simply search for the device, credential, or even more generic terms. Depending on your organization's policies, you may be able to click the Connect button, like Paul, to open a session to your target resource. This allows you to quickly connect to many resources in a short period and is another option available to you outside of leveraging your own SSH client. You might also have the option to see a password in case of emergency, like Paul has done here by clicking the Show button. This show operation may also be protected by additional approval requirements by your organization.
Let us look at how to create MFA caching key.
Something that is unique to SSH connections is the ability to create an MFA caching key to ease the number of authentications needed when connecting to many systems via CyberArk. If this is enabled by your company, there are only a few steps needed to take advantage of this. Note, this is possible when leveraging our REST API, but for now, Paul is going to leverage the UI to request a key. Simply authenticate to the CyberArk portal. Click Accounts, then click SSH MFA Caching, and then generate and download your key. Now you can leverage this key inside your SSH client with the same SSH at syntax, only now you're not asked to re-authenticate for the connection.